Okay, just picture this for a second. A vital railway line, the absolute lifeline for an entire region, is just hanging in midair over a raging sea. Sounds like something out of a movie, right? Well, that is exactly what happened at Dawlish. And this story, it's not just about one crazy storm. No, it's a huge lesson in our ongoing battle with the ocean, and you'll see it has massive implications for coastal towns and cities, maybe even one near you. All right, so let's set the scene. We're in South Devon, England. It's February 2014, and a monster of a storm is just rolling in off the Atlantic. We're talking a brutal combination here. You've got super high tides, you've got hurricane force winds, and waves so powerful, people said it felt like an earthquake. This wasn't just a bit of bad weather, you know? This was a coastal engineer's absolute worst nightmare, coming to life right before their eyes. And right at the heart of all this chaos was this massive seawall. This thing was built for one job and one job only: hold back the sea. But the thing is, it was about to be completely, utterly overwhelmed and just ripped apart. So the big question is, how on earth did a defense like this fail so spectacularly? Well, let's dive in and find out. Okay, first things first. To really get why this happened, we've got to look at the unique and, let's be honest, pretty precarious setting of Dawlish itself. The geography here is a huge piece of the puzzle. You see, Dawlish is basically squeezed into this incredibly tight spot. The town and its main railway line, and we're talking the main artery connecting the whole region to the rest of the country, are on this tiny, narrow strip of land. You've got sheer cliffs on one side and the relentless English Channel on the other. So this isn't just a railway that's near the sea. Oh no, it's practically in the sea. And that makes it just completely, totally exposed to the ocean's raw power. So let's get into the anatomy of this collapse. How did the wall actually fail? To really understand that, we need to dig into a little bit of the science here, because this wasn't just about one big wave hitting a wall. It was more like a relentless strategic assault by the ocean itself. And it all starts with this really cool concept called dynamic equilibrium. Now, think of a healthy coastline like a living, breathing system. It's constantly getting a supply of sand and shingle, which it uses to protect itself. It's this delicate balance, right? But what happens when you build a hard structure, like a huge seawall? Well, it acts like a dam. It completely disrupts that natural flow, blocking the sediment. So the beach is literally starved of the very material it needs to defend itself. Kind of crazy, right? The wall, which was built to protect the coast, was unintentionally making it weaker and weaker over decades. So when that storm hit, it was like the perfect recipe for disaster just came together. First up, you get the high tides combined with a storm surge that jacks up the sea level way higher than normal. Then you've got these incredibly powerful destructive waves smashing against the wall, but now they're hitting much higher up and, crucially, they're digging away or undercutting the material right at the base. This just goes on, weakening the foundations until, bang, catastrophic failure. They just couldn't take it anymore. And believe me, the sea had an entire arsenal of weapons at its disposal. You've got something called hydraulic action. That's when waves force water and air into tiny little cracks in the wall, basically blasting it apart from the inside out. Then there's abrasion. Think of this like a giant natural sandblaster, with waves just hurling shingle and rocks against the wall over and over. And all this time, corrosion is just slowly eating away at the concrete. It was a full-on, multi-front attack that these aging defenses, well, they just stood no chance. So when that wall finally gives way, the impact isn't gradual, it's instantaneous. And we're not just talking about a broken piece of concrete here. This was about severing a vital artery for the entire region. The lifeline just snapped. And just like that, for weeks, the main railway line into Cornwall was gone. A huge section of the track was just left hanging there, suspended in midair over the churning sea. Can you imagine seeing that? This effectively cut off an entire region of the country. It isolated communities and businesses in a way that people hadn't seen in decades. And the domino effect was immediate. With that main line to Cornwall closed, whole communities were suddenly isolated. Think about the economic hit. Tourism, freight, you name it. They faced huge losses. People's homes right there on the seafront were flooded and damaged. And what this really did was expose a deep social vulnerability. The failure of this one piece of infrastructure showed just how fragile the whole system really was. But here's the thing. The response to this crisis, it actually marks a real turning point in how we think about defending our coastlines. The failure at Dawlish basically forced engineers and planners to go back to the drawing board and fundamentally rethink their entire approach. It was no longer about just patching up the damage. Yeah, this event really triggered a major shift in thinking. So the old way, right? That was all about hard engineering. You build a big, rigid wall designed to protect against a typical storm. The problem? It gets overwhelmed by extreme events and it totally ignores what nature is trying to do. The new way is about integrated management. It's about designing for those extreme events, aiming for long-term resilience, and, this is the key part, working with the coastal dynamics, not fighting against them. We're talking about building structures that can absorb wave energy, not just block it, and really looking at the whole coastline as one big interconnected system. And that brings us to the bigger picture. This event in a small English town, it became a massive lesson for coastal communities all over the world. Dawlish wasn't just a local problem, it was a global wake-up call. It also gave us this perfect and frankly terrifying example of something called coastal hazard feedback. Think of it like a dangerous, vicious cycle. When a sea defense fails, it doesn't just leave the area exposed. The failure itself actually changes the shape of the coastline, which in turn makes it even more vulnerable to the next storm. It's a feedback loop you really don't want to be in. So ultimately, the story of Dawlish leaves all of us with a really profound question. It's a question that pretty much every coastal community on the planet is facing right now. As our coasts keep changing, as sea levels rise and storms get more intense, what do we do? Do we just keep building bigger and bigger walls? Do we try to adapt and find new ways to live with the water? Or do we make the incredibly difficult choice to retreat? And the truth is, there are no easy answers.